When you begin to truly understand what self-leadership is, you realize that it has nothing to do with controlling other people or seeking validation for the things you want to do. It starts with you, with your inner decision to move forward, even when no one else gives you permission. Too often, men fall into the trap of waiting for her approval, waiting for her acknowledgement, waiting for her to give a green light before they act. But leadership, real leadership, is when you don't wait. You don't look around to see who's clapping for you. You don't pause to see who agrees. You simply take the first step because you know the vision you hold inside is worth moving on. The reason so many people struggle with confidence, because they're always outsourcing their self-worth. They want someone else to tell them it's okay before they make a decision. But when you do that, you've already weakened your power. You've handed over the keys to your destiny. Self-leadership is about claiming that back. It's about recognizing that your decisions shape your reality. And if you want to build a life of strength, influence, and direction, you must learn to move without waiting for someone else to nod their head. Think about it. Every great breakthrough, every bold move in history didn't come from someone who asked for permission first. It came from someone who believed in their vision so much that they couldn't afford to wait. When you act without asking, you're not being reckless. You're being responsible for yourself. There's a difference. Recklessness is when you move without thought. But responsibility is when you understand that your path belongs to you and you can't expect others to walk it for you. A man who leads himself doesn't operate on borrowed approval. He listens to his own intuition. He studies his own heart and he decides. That's the essence of confidence, not arrogance, but certainty. And certainty doesn't come from asking someone else to validate you. It comes from acting on what you already know to be true. Now, understand this clearly. When you lead yourself, you create space for others to respect you. People don't respect a man who waits at the crossroads forever, asking everyone which way to go. They respect the man who takes a path and starts walking. Even if he makes a mistake, he commands respect because he had the courage to move. And mistakes aren't failures, they're lessons. They're stepping stones that shape you into someone wiser, stronger, and more capable. But if you never act without approval, you never learn, you never grow. You remain stuck in a loop of hesitation, always dependent on someone else's perspective. And that's not leadership. It's dependence disguised as love or respect. Self-leadership is freedom. It's the freedom to decide without fear of rejection. It's the freedom to move even when no one claps. It's the freedom to pursue your goals without constantly explaining yourself. Because when you constantly ask, this okay? Should I do this? You're indirectly saying, I don't trust myself enough to lead my own life. And that energy seeps into everything. It affects the way you speak, the way you carry yourself, and the way others respond to you. People can feel it when you don't trust yourself, just as they can feel it when you walk in certainty. The irony is this: when you stop waiting for permission and start leading yourself, that's when others naturally begin to follow. They see your conviction, they see your discipline, and they're drawn to it. That's when respect is built. That's when admiration grows. That's when relationships strengthen, because you're no longer asking someone to hold your hand and guide you through life. You're guiding yourself, and that strength makes you far more reliable, far more attractive, far more trustworthy. Think about your own life. How many opportunities have slipped by because you hesitated? Because you waited for her to say yes, because you doubted yourself until the moment was gone. That hesitation costs more than mistakes ever will. A mistake will teach you, but hesitation will rob you without giving anything back. That's why self-leadership is not optional. It's essential. You must learn to move when the vision calls you, to take action when your spirit nudges you without waiting for applause, without asking for someone else's approval. When you start doing this, something remarkable happens. You begin to build trust with yourself. Every time you make a decision and follow through, you're telling your subconscious mind, I can count on me. And that is the root of confidence. Confidence isn't loud words or false bravado. It's the quiet certainty that you can rely on yourself to do what needs to be done. And the more you practice this, the more natural it becomes. You no longer feel the need to run every choice by someone else. You no longer fear their disapproval. You know who you are, and you know where you're going. This doesn't mean you ignore her or that you don't value her thoughts. But there's a difference between valuing someone's perspective and depending on it. Leadership means you can listen without being controlled. You can care without being dependent. That balance is what makes you powerful. That balance is what makes her respect you. Because at the core, no woman wants to lead a man's life for him. She wants to see a man who can stand on his own 2 feet, who can make decisions and take action with confidence. She wants to walk beside a man who knows where he's going, not drag along someone who needs constant reassurance. And once you grasp that, once you internalize that, self-leadership is the foundation of everything. Your relationships, your success, your peace of mind. You begin to see why asking for permission before every step is such a weakness. You were not designed to live life waiting for someone to give you the green light. You were designed to move, to act, to lead. You were designed to create and to build. And every time you act without waiting for validation, you're exercising that design. You're stepping into who you really are. Energy is one of the most powerful forces you carry. And most people don't even realize the weight it has. You can walk into a room without saying a word, And people can feel who you are before you open your mouth. They sense your confidence, your doubt, your vision, or your lack of direction. That's why it said that energy speaks louder than permission. You don't have to go around asking anyone how to live, what to pursue, or what steps to take next. Your results and your presence will speak far louder than any explanation ever could. People are watching you more than they are listening to you. And that's something you have to understand if you want to live with true power. When you are aligned with your purpose, when you're acting with conviction, you naturally project an energy that cannot be ignored. You don't have to convince people to respect you because they feel it in the way you move. You don't have to beg for approval because the energy of a man who knows where he's going will always draw attention. Think about the times you've seen someone walk into a space and without saying anything, everyone knew they had a certain presence. That's not arrogance, it's alignment. It's the result of someone who decided to lead themselves without hesitation. The problem most people face is they drain their own energy by constantly waiting for permission. They weaken themselves by asking questions like, do you think I should? Or is it okay if I do this? Every time you do that, you're telling yourself you're not enough. You're signaling to your subconscious mind that you don't trust your own power. And over time, that weakens your energy. You become smaller, hesitant, and unsure. People don't follow words, they follow energy. So if you want to influence, if you want to attract, if you want to live a life of strength, you have to start trusting the energy you carry. Energy is built through action. Every time you move without asking, every time you step forward with certainty, you feed that energy. It grows stronger and begins to radiate out of you. That's why people who take initiative, who don't wait for validation, are always the ones who end up respected. Others may not even agree with them, but they can't ignore the fact that their energy is different. It's magnetic. It pulls people in. And that's the beauty of it. You don't have to try to convince anyone to see your worth because the energy you carry already communicates it. Now understand this. When you start moving without waiting for approval, not everyone will applaud you. Some will misunderstand. Some will criticize. Some might even resist you. But your energy will remain louder than their disapproval. The more you live with certainty, the more their opinions fade into the background. Because deep down, even your critics can't ignore the strength of a man who acts with conviction. They might not say it out loud, but they feel it. And that's the power you must embrace. What you're really doing when you act without asking is affirm to the world that you trust yourself. And trust is contagious. When others see that you believe in your path, they're more likely to believe in you too. That's how leaders are built, not through speeches or explanations, but through the energy of certainty. A leader doesn't need to constantly ask, do you believe in me? He shows through his action that he already believes in himself, and that belief becomes a beacon for others. You see, energy doesn't lie. You can say all the right things, but if your energy is weak, no one will buy into it. On the other hand, you could say very little, but if your energy is strong, people will feel it and be drawn to it. That's why focusing on energy is far more important than chasing approval. Approval fades. Energy endures. Approval is conditional. Energy is authentic. And when you learn to move without asking, you cultivate an energy of freedom that cannot be taken away from you. Think about it in terms of relationships. A woman doesn't want to constantly tell you how to live or what to do. She wants to feel your energy, your certainty, your presence. She wants to know that you're a man who can stand on his own, who doesn't need her permission to act. That doesn't mean you ignore her or dismiss her input, but it means you don't lean on her as a crutch. You don't drain her with your indecision. You give her something to lean into because your energy is strong, decisive, and trustworthy. That's why the most attractive quality in a man is not his looks or his money. It's the energy he carries. When you stop asking and start doing, you're no longer seeking energy from others. You're generating it within yourself. You're living from the inside out instead of the outside in. And that's the shift that changes everything. Most people live outside in. They're always asking, what do you think? Do you approve? Am I good enough? That drains them. But when you live inside out, your energy comes from your vision, your purpose, your decisions. It's unshakable because it doesn't depend on anyone else's validation. The truth is people may forget what you say, but they'll never forget how your energy made them feel. That's why you must take responsibility for it. Stop waiting for permission because permission is external. Energy is internal. And when you move with strong internal energy, you no longer need anyone to validate your steps. You become the validation. You become the proof. And people begin to adjust to you, not the other way around. Respect is one of the most misunderstood words in relationships because too many men confuse it with dependency. They think that in order to respect a woman, they must hand over the keys to their life, wait for her to tell them what's right or wrong, and constantly check in before making a move. But that's not respect. That's dependence disguised as love. Real respect is when you can value her thoughts, appreciate her perspective, and still lead yourself without needing her to steer your every decision. It's knowing how to honor her place in your life without giving up your own. A man who respects without dependency doesn't live in fear of her disapproval. He listens to her, he considers her, but he doesn't shrink himself for her. He doesn't put his vision on pause because he's worried she might not like it. He knows that respect isn't about surrendering your authority over your own life. It's about being strong enough to stand firm while still making space for a voice. That balance is what creates strength in a relationship. When you lose that balance, when you let dependency creep in, you end up creating frustration instead of respect. She loses trust in you, not because you're unkind, but because you're unsure of yourself. Dependency drains attraction because it signals weakness. When you can't make a move without asking her, when you constantly lean on her approval, you put her in a position she never wanted to be in, you make her the leader of your life. And while she may care for you, while she may even try to guide you, deep down she doesn't want that role. She wants to see you as the man who can carry himself. She wants to know that if everything else falls apart, you'll still be able to make decisions, still be able to protect and provide direction. That assurance is what gives her safety. Dependency removes that assurance because it says, I can't trust myself, so I'm asking you to trust for me. That is not respect, it's pressure. When you learn to respect without dependency, you create a healthier dynamic. You allow her to relax into her feminine energy because she knows you're not leaning on her for leadership. She knows you hear her, but you don't collapse under her words. That makes her respect you more. She sees you as a partner, not a project. She sees you as someone who values her, but doesn't depend on her for his self-worth. And the truth is, when a man carries himself with that kind of balance, a woman naturally feels more secure around him. She feels safe because she knows he's not going to break under the weight of life. Respect without dependency also protects you as a man. It keeps you from falling into the trap of people pleasing, where you're always trying to guess what she wants, always trying to adjust yourself to fit her expectations. Because the reality is, when you do that, you lose yourself. You start living her life instead of yours. And that leads to resentment. You begin to feel drained, unfulfilled, and directionless because you abandoned your own path in the name of trying to keep her happy. But the irony is, she doesn't want that. She doesn't want you to disappear for her. She wants you to remain who you are, strong in your own identity, yet caring enough to respect her at the same time. To respect without dependency means you're rooted in self-respect first. You know your values, you know your vision, you know your boundaries. And because you respect yourself, it becomes natural to extend that respect outward to her. But notice, it flows from you to her, not from her to you first. A man who doesn't respect himself can never truly respect a woman. He'll only end up clinging to her, trying to get from her what he hasn't given to himself. That's why the foundation is always self-leadership, self-trust, and self-respect. Only then can you give her something real to respect in return. This balance also builds stability in relationships. When you're not dependent, disagreements don't shake you. You don't panic when she challenges you. You don't crumble when she disagrees. You stand firm in your truth while still listening to hers. That stance makes her trust you more because she sees that you don't fall apart under pressure. Dependency would make you anxious in those moments. You'd scramble to fix her feelings, to win back her approval. But respect without dependency allows you to remain calm, confident, and secure even in conflict. That's what builds lasting love and lasting trust. The power of this principle is that it shifts the weight of responsibility back where it belongs, on your shoulders. You are responsible for your direction, your choices, your energy. She is not your compass. She is your companion. She can walk beside you. She can share wisdom. She can inspire you, but she should never carry the burden of leading your life. When you remove that weight from her shoulders, you both win. She gets to be in her natural flow, and you get to stand in your natural strength. That harmony is where attraction flourishes, where respect deepens, and where both people can grow together without one depending entirely on the other. Momentum is one of the most valuable forces in life, and yet it's the very thing most men destroy when they sit back waiting for permission. Waiting kills momentum. It's like standing at the starting line with the engine running but never hitting the gas because you're too worried about who approves of your direction. Initiative, on the other hand, creates momentum. When you take the first step without hesitation, you set energy in motion. You may not know exactly how everything will unfold. You may not have every answer figured out, but that initial step builds a force that begins to carry you forward. And once that momentum is created, opportunities start appearing that would have never shown themselves if you had stood still, waiting for someone else to tell you it was time to move. The power of initiative lies in the fact that it proves to yourself and others that you trust your vision. When you move first, when you decide without needing to be nudged, you communicate confidence. You send a message, not just to people around you, to your own subconscious, that you are a man who acts. That message builds identity, and identity shapes destiny. Every time you take initiative, you reinforce the belief that you are capable, decisive, and committed. And over time, those small acts of initiative compound into massive results. Now think about what happens when you don't take initiative. You stall. You hesitate. You wait for conditions to be perfect or for someone else to reassure you that it's the right move. But the truth is, there's no such thing as perfect conditions. Life doesn't wait for you to feel comfortable. Opportunities don't stay parked at your door while you think it over endlessly. They pass to the man who is willing to act. They show themselves to the one who moves first. That's why initiative is so powerful. It sets you apart instantly. While others are still debating, you've already created movement. And movement attracts. Movement gets noticed. Movement creates progress. The world doesn't respect hesitation. It respects action. You can talk about your plans all day long. You can explain to her or to anyone else what you hope to do. But until you move, it's just words. Initiative is proof. It's evidence that you're serious. It's the difference between dreaming and building. And when you live with initiative, you not only build credibility with others, you build self-respect. You stop seeing yourself as a man who waits, and you start seeing yourself as a man who creates. That shift in identity changes everything about the way you carry yourself. Another powerful truth about initiative is that it multiplies. One action opens the door to another. You might not know the entire staircase, but when you take the first step, the second step reveals itself. People waste so much time trying to see all the steps before they move, and that's why they stay stuck. Initiative doesn't demand the whole picture. It only demands that you trust yourself enough to take the first step. And once you do, clarity grows. The path unfolds. But if you never move, you never see the opportunities that only reveal themselves in motion. In relationship, this principle is critical. A man who always waits for her to tell him what to do communicates uncertainty. He shows her that he doesn't trust himself. But a man who takes initiative, who plans, who decides, who moves without needing to be told, creates security. He shows her she can trust his leadership. She doesn't have to push him. She doesn't have to drag him. She doesn't have to mother him. He moves because he knows it's his role to lead himself first. That's attractive because it proves he's not dependent. He values her input, yes, but he doesn't wait for her instruction. He acts because that's who he is. And beyond attraction, initiative breeds opportunities in every area of life, in business, in personal growth, in health. Those who act without waiting are the ones who get ahead. While one man is waiting for the right time to start a project, another man has already launched and is learning, adjusting, and improving. While one is asking others if he should go for it, another has already gone for it and discovered 10 new opportunities along the way. That's the dividing line. One stays stuck in hesitation. The other creates momentum through initiative. It's not about recklessness. Initiative isn't about blindly rushing forward without thought. It's about trusting that you have enough wisdom, enough strength, and enough vision to take the first step. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to be willing to move. That willingness separates leaders from followers. Followers wait to be told. Leaders act, and in acting, they create a path that others eventually follow. When you begin to practice initiative, you'll notice that fear doesn't disappear, but it loses its grip. The longer you wait, the bigger fear becomes. But the moment you act, fear begins to shrink. Action starves fear. Initiative builds courage, because courage is not the absence of fear. It's movement in spite of it. And the more you act, the easier it becomes. Momentum starts to carry you, and what once felt impossible starts to feel natural. That's why initiative is one of the greatest demonstrations of strength a man can offer. It proves that he doesn't need to be pushed or told what to do. It proves that he has the vision and discipline to move even when the path isn't crystal clear, and that ability creates results. Results are what people respect. Results are what build credibility. And results don't come from waiting. They come from acting, from deciding, from stepping forward before anyone else says it's okay. Attraction has never been about the words you say. It has always been about the actions you take. A man can talk endlessly about what he plans to do, what he hopes to build, or where he wants to go in life. But if those words are not backed by consistent action, they fall flat. People, especially women, are not drawn to empty promises. They are drawn to the certainty that comes from watching a man actually move. Action creates a magnetic pull that words alone can never duplicate. It's why the man who quietly builds, who quietly moves toward his vision without fanfare, often attracts far more respect and admiration than the one who constantly speaks but never delivers. There is something deeply compelling about a man who doesn't just dream but executes. When a woman sees you following through on your commitments, staying disciplined when it would be easier to quit, and showing up for yourself and your goals without needing anyone to push you, she feels a different kind of respect for you. That respect becomes attraction because it reassures her that you are dependable, that your words mean something, and that your presence carries weight. Actions create safety, and safety is one of the strongest forces of attraction there is. A woman does not want to gamble her trust on a man who talks big but never delivers. She wants to know that when you say you're going to do something, your actions will prove it true. What makes action so powerful is that it communicates qualities words cannot fully capture. Discipline, consistency, resilience. These things don't need to be announced. They reveal themselves in the way you live. A man who wakes up early to chase his goals doesn't have to tell anyone he's disciplined because they see it. A man who refuses to quit when setbacks come doesn't have to declare that he's resilient because his persistence makes it clear. Action carries an energy that speaks louder than self-promotion ever could. And when you carry that energy, people feel it before you ever explain yourself. Another important truth is that attraction isn't built in grand gestures. It's built in small, consistent actions over time. It's in showing up for your responsibilities daily, in moving toward your vision step by step, in proving with your habits that you are the kind of man who can be relied upon. Those little actions accumulate and create a momentum that others can't help but notice. Words can impress for a moment, but actions impress for a lifetime. Words fade quickly, but actions leave an imprint because they produce visible results. When you live this way, you also separate yourself from the majority. Most men spend their lives talking about what they're going to do. They tell their friends, they tell their partners, they even tell themselves, but deep down they never commit to the action required. They stay stuck in planning mode, in excuses and hesitation. That's why the man who simply acts, who chooses movement over endless discussion, instantly stands out. He doesn't have to say he's different. People see it. And that difference is magnetic. It sets you apart not because you shouted louder, but because you moved when others stayed still. It's also worth understanding that attraction isn't only about drawing a woman closer. It's about drawing opportunities closer as well. Life itself responds to action. Doors begin to open when you move forward. Connections appear when you step out. And possibilities reveal themselves when you prove you're serious. The energy of action signals to the world that you are ready. And the world responds by giving you more to work with. In contrast, hesitation signals unreadiness. And so opportunities bypass you and move toward the man who is already in motion. In relationships, this principle becomes even clearer. A woman might be intrigued by your charm at first, but over time, it's your actions that determine whether her attraction deepens or fades. If she sees you leading yourself, pursuing your goals, and creating stability through your actions, she feels inspired to invest in you emotionally. But if she sees inconsistency, procrastination, or dependency, her attraction begins to wither. She may not always say it directly, but she feels it. Women are highly attuned to the energy of action versus inaction. They can sense when a man is moving forward with confidence and when he is stalling in doubt. The power of action is also that it doesn't require you to boast or beg for attention. You don't have to chase when your actions are aligned with purpose. You don't have to constantly reassure her of your worth because your life itself demonstrates it. People naturally gravitate towards strength, and strength is proven through what you do consistently. That's why men who act without hesitation often find that they don't need to explain themselves. Others pick up on their direction and certainty simply by observing their movement. Even more than attraction, action creates identity. Every time you follow through, you're not just proving something to others, you're proving it to yourself. You begin to trust yourself more deeply, and that self-trust radiates out as confidence. And that confidence is one of the strongest forms of attraction there is. A man who trusts himself doesn't need external validation. He becomes the validation. His life becomes the evidence of who he is. That's why women are naturally drawn to men of action. They're drawn to the energy of certainty, the assurance that comes from watching a man live aligned with his vision rather than just talking about it. Freedom is one of the greatest gifts a man can give himself, and it begins with the way he makes decisions. When you are constantly waiting on someone else to tell you what to do, when you pause at every turn because you're afraid of making the wrong choice without her approval, you are not free. You are bound. Freedom in decision making is not about ignoring the people you care for. It's not about shutting out a perspective, but it is about refusing to live in hesitation. It is about moving forward with clarity and conviction, trusting that your path belongs to you and that no one else can walk it for you. Indecision is one of the most exhausting states of mind. It drains your energy because your thoughts are always split in two. You wonder if you should act. You wonder what she would think. You wonder what others might say. And in the meantime, nothing gets done. This lack of movement not only paralyzes your progress, it also chips away at your confidence. Every time you delay a decision because you're afraid of disapproval, you weaken your trust in yourself. Over time, that hesitation becomes a habit, and that habit becomes your identity. You start to believe you are someone who can't decide without permission. But when you choose freedom in decision making, you break that cycle. You say to yourself, I trust me enough to move. That simple act changes the entire way you carry yourself. A decisive man doesn't mean a reckless man. It doesn't mean he ignores wisdom or refuses counsel. It means he knows when to listen and when to act. He knows that advice can guide him, but it cannot replace him. He understands that he can honor someone's opinion while still making his own choice. That is what separates freedom from dependence. Dependence hands over control and waits. Freedom hears, considers, and then moves. And that ability to move is what builds trust. Because the truth is, people are far more willing to follow someone who is decisive than someone who is endlessly waiting for permission. In relationships, this shows up in a powerful way. A woman feels secure with a man who makes decisions with clarity. When she sees that he can stand on his own 2 feet, that he doesn't need her to mother his every move, she feels safe. That safety builds attraction because it proves to her that she can lean on him if life gets difficult. But when she sees a man who cannot decide without her, who constantly delays because he is afraid of her reaction, she feels more like his parent than his partner. That's when attraction fades, not because she doesn't care for him, but because he has stepped out of his role as a man and placed himself in a position of dependency. The freedom to decide also allows you to take risks, and risks are where growth lies. If you always wait until you're certain everyone approves, you'll never stretch beyond your comfort zone. Growth requires stepping into the unknown, and that means being willing to make decisions others may not fully understand. You cannot build a strong, purposeful life if every step requires validation. Freedom is when you can say, I choose this path, I'll accept the outcome, and I'll learn from it no matter what happens. That kind of confidence is rare, and it is deeply respected. Every time you make a decision without hesitation, you train your mind to trust you. You strengthen the bond between your vision and your action. That bond is what creates self-belief, and self-belief is the foundation of all success. A man who believes in himself doesn't crumble when others doubt him. He doesn't fold when someone questions his choices. He knows his life is his responsibility, and he moves with that understanding. That's why decisive men create results, because they don't waste energy in endless hesitation. They move, they learn, they adjust, and they keep moving. Freedom in decision making also protects your peace. When you're always waiting on permission, you live with constant anxiety. You second guess every thought. You wonder if you're disappointing someone, and you carry the weight of trying to please everyone. But when you learn to decide with clarity, you free yourself from that pressure. You realize you can care for someone deeply without making them the ruler of your choices. You understand that real love and real respect flow when both people stand in their own strength, not when one person collapses into the other. That freedom creates balance. It allows you to honor her while still honoring yourself. And once you experience this kind of freedom, it becomes difficult to return to dependency. You begin to feel the power of moving without fear. You begin to enjoy the peace of trusting yourself. You start to see how much more progress you make when you no longer pause at every intersection to ask for directions. The more you practice decisive action, the more natural it becomes, until it is no longer something you force. It is simply who you are. A man who moves with freedom in his decisions walks differently, speaks differently, and is received differently by the world. His energy changes because he is no longer weighed down by hesitation. He carries the lightness of knowing he can rely on himself, and that lightness becomes a strength others are drawn to.